Please explain how China has strategically taken over control of numerous African countries and Jamaica without the use of military force. What will their domination mean long term?
Great question. I'll pause because it bothers me when I look at Africa and the Caribbean islands. And I just came back from Aruba, and I'll be going later on this year to Martinique, Curacao, and back to Suriname in South America. But it bothers me when I look at the history of how we fought for liberation followed by independence in the Caribbean, only to hand that independence back over to another race of people. So we fought for freedom from the white man, and now we're handing over that freedom to the yellow man. When I was in Jamaica, 2015, I keynoted National Heroes Week, Irie FM and Ocho Rios, and Marcus Garvey's back, me and Muta Baruka, actually. And while I was in Jamaica, I heard all these rumblings about the Chinese. And I've been to Jamaica before, and I've seen the Chinese. But in studying what they have done since my last visit, I was astounded and appalled to find out that they had made so much inroads into controlling and influencing the infrastructure of the Jamaican people. The Chinese built a road from Kingston, one side of the island, to the other side of the island. And in exchange for the roads that they built, the Jamaican government, unless this has changed since then, gave the Chinese total control over the toll money that will be made by people using the Northwest or East-West Highway. Why would you give a foreign power complete monetary control of the tolls on this road that you know half of Jamaica going to be using? You're talking millions of dollars of revenue you're giving to the yellow man just because he built the road. In addition to that, the Chinese are building it's probably done by now. They were building at that time 2 schools, and they were bringing Chinese educators over to help the Jamaican people educate black children. They built the Children's Hospital, which is supposed to be largely staffed with Chinese. They also gave the Chinese total control of all tourism on both sides of that highway that goes from one side of the island to the other. I was also told that they gave the Chinese the right to drill in natural rainforests in the Jamaican on the Jamaican territory for Chinese exploitation. They'd given them tax abatements, and they also purchased, if I'm not mistaken, the port, the main port of Jamaica.
All right, they own the port.
Is owned by the Chinese. Exactly. If another race owns your port, that means they control what's coming in. They control what's going out. What about the drugs? What about the guns? What about the COVID? You don't know what them people bringing in. And you mean to tell me that the Chinese care so much about Jamaican people that they're not going to educate our kids and take care of their health? Chinese don't care about black folks. Go to China. Go to China and see how they treat black people in China. So to me, what I think this is the government of Jamaica, like so many African governments, so many other Caribbean governments have done. They've gotten in bed financially with the Chinese. The Chinese have studied the way the white man has practiced neocolonialism throughout Africa. And the Chinese has learned that these black leaders don't really care about their people. They're all about their pockets. So I'm going to do what the white man did, but I'm going to do it 1 time better. I'm going to offer them double the money. You let me take over this land right here. I'll get the white man offer you $1 million. I'm offering you $3 million. And I'm going to build you a retirement home. And I'm going to pay for all your kids to go to college in China. You follow what I'm saying? And I'm going to give you a private military. So the Chinese have basically become neocolonialists 2.0. They're outdoing the Europeans. You follow me? And they're giving Caribbean and African leaders offers that they can't refuse. And guess what? When you abdicate on that loan that they give you, because all this is loans. These are not handouts. It's all loans. When you abdicate on the loan in that contract, you have to give them large concessions of land and large concessions of your economy. There's an African country right now. Is it Uganda? There was an African country who defaulted on their loan to the Chinese, and they now own their national airport. I forget which, they own the airport now because they couldn't pay back the loan. The Chinese know what they're doing. The problem we have as African people is we tend to think anybody who's not white is a friend of ours. Nobody is our friend, not the Arab, not the Chinese, not the Latino, except the African Latinos who identify with us, not the East Indians, not the Native Americans. We don't have friends. But black people have been seduced into this multiculturalism, which says the brown man is your friend, the yellow man is your friend, the red man is your friend. No, they're not. Black people don't have no friends. And my greatest fear about Chinese neocolonialism 2.0, my greatest fear about Chinese neocolonialism 2.0 is when the time for revolution comes, because there will be a second revolution because you got to get rid of the Chinese. You're going to have to fight 10 times harder. When you fought to get the white man out in the 60s, in the 40s, in the 50s, it was a little easier because he don't have the numerical strength. The white man had to use other black people in his armies to fight blacks because they're only 10% of the world. They don't have enough. China is the most populous country on the planet Earth. They have 1 billion people, not to mention their reserves around the planet, okay? Don't get me wrong, African people, we're 2 billion. We're the biggest. The problem is most of us identify something other than black, which reduces our numbers. I'm not African. I'm multiracial. I'm not African. I'm Latino. I'm not African. I'm Samoan. You follow? So we are disintegrated based on these names. Here's the point that I'm making. Because the Chinese have the technology, because the Chinese have the manpower, the second war for African independence, the second revolution for African independence against Chinese neocolonialism 2.0 is going to be 10 times as bloody, 10 times as long, and it's going to require the sacrifice of 10 times as many people. We will not be able to throw them out of Africa and throw them out of the Caribbean as easily as we did the whites. And the whites wasn't easy. That was a hell of a war. So just multiply that by 100, and that's what we're going to have to deal with the Chinese. The worst thing we're doing is giving them all this, and it's being done through the politicians. The politicians are doing it. But here's 3 things that keeps Africa enslaved to the Chinese and the white man by virtue of their politicians. Number 1, we have been distracted in America, the Caribbean, Africa, all over the world. It's a Pan-African problem. We have been distracted from development with democracy. Everybody's focusing on who to vote for. You're not looking at the conditions. What's going to change whether he wins or he wins? Because guess who's financing both of them? The same people stealing your oil. Who's financing both of them? The same people stealing your gold. Who's financing both of them? The same people stealing your coltan. You follow me? So democracy is a joke they play on black people to make you think you can have radical transformation without revolution. The reason the white man pushes democracy globally so hard is if there's ever a breakdown in the black man's confidence in democracy, the only alternative is revolution. So that's number 1. Democracy is a distraction from development. Number 2, when I travel, especially Africa, but it's true in the Caribbean also, black people are more concerned with their tribe being in control than they are with liberation from foreign control. Are you following me? I've seen it. So when the elections is coming up, it's not about freeing us from white supremacy or Chinese imperialism. It's about, are my people going to be the president? Is somebody from my tribe going to be the prime minister? And because they're more concerned about tribal imperialism than African independence, this democratic scheme that they run on black people continues because we're so petty and so small in our thinking. I just want to make sure his people don't get the presidency. I'm not even looking at the bigger picture. The white man knows this. The Chinese know this. So they come in, exploit, finance both sides. So no matter who wins, they get all the resources. And then the third issue is most African leaders and Caribbean are foreign educated. They go to Britain for their education. They go to France for their education. They go to Belgium. They come to America for their education. And what did Dr. Carter G. Woodson say in Miseducation of the Negro? The college-educated Negro is seldom of any use to his race because the education he gets is an education that takes him away from identification with his people. So most of our African and Caribbean and American leaders are Negropean. They have an African body, they have a European mind. So the white man and the yellow man are controlling the black man through remote control by virtue of conscious control of the way that he thinks. The entire thought process of the African leader, there's a few exceptions, but for most of them and the Caribbean, the entire thought process is that of a white man. How can we get free?